Every year since the dawn of South Africa's democracy, we mark the historic day of the Soweto Uprising, in which black youth rose up in coordinated protest to denounce the apartheid regime, reject white supremacy, and condemn the state of languages and heritage. In light of the Black Lives Matter protests globally, young people in South Africa say they are aware of the systems of oppression that continue to exploit people here and globally. Young people have taken to social media to demand structural change and for society to be transformed so that all can have a life of dignity. A movement called itself the Youth's Truth will be protesting today for structural change in society. And we're joined by one of the organisers, and that's Shreya Semnarayan. Good to have you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited.
Talk to us about exactly what the Youth's Truth, what does it all stand for?
So we basically just want to go against the structural system of white oppression and white supremacy. So systematic racism and that we experience in schools and in society in general, that hasn't really, it's changed since apartheid, but it's still very evident to us. So we want to highlight the systematic oppression and the systematic racism and draw attention to it and make people have these difficult conversations because it's not over and not just an American thing. I think we experience it every day in South Africa as well. As much as apartheid is over, it's still very prevalent in society.
Yeah,
and the youth as we.
I suppose what's happened now as well is it's just been reignited after, what's been happening in America with regard to what we can call, I suppose, the George Floyd movement and the Black Lives Matter. And, it's moving as a wave through the entire globe. However, in South Africa, this has always been the situation. And, the form of a protest has always been there in South African society. But as we talk to you as the youth today, obviously the youth of 1976 were protesting about something different. However, you are protesting against similar things, but of course with a much more modern twist for today's world. What are those things that the youth really want to see change?
I think racism today is a lot more subtle than it was in 1976. So I think we just want to highlight the subtleties and call when they are being racist and when, sorry, I'm stuttering a bit.
You're doing very well, don't worry.
We just want to call people out and acknowledge some stuff that we ignore and that we've been putting on hold for a really long time. And we felt that the protests in America and with everyone being emotionally charged, if I should say, it was a good time to bring it up. And also with Youth Day, we found today would be a really good time for it's symbolic for the youth to come out and protest and show what we want to say.
Yeah, and speaking out, that's one thing that I really have noticed, because I think with social media and with the ability to come out and use your voices in different ways, have the youth of today found that in a way easier to express themselves?
I think definitely. I think social media is a great platform for us to say what we're saying and show solidarity for movements around the world. But I personally felt that right now we've become desensitized to social media and we've been constantly in upbeat. And I felt like we need to, that's why I organize this protest in real life. So it shows a different form of action that's more real. Because I feel social media is sometimes, it's become too common, if that makes sense. We've become desensitized to it. So I feel like stirring things up in real life shows that we actually mean business and that we're serious about what we want to talk about.
Yeah, and I have noticed this because, this is something that, if we can talk to schools and what's been happening in the schools around the country, and particularly with regard to the private schooling in South Africa, that the youth, past pupils, learners that are there currently studying, parents, are all speaking out and talking to how things have to change. It's like you say, that silent racism that is not necessarily above board and as bad as it was during the apartheid days, but it still exists. And the youth are talking out about this. They're refusing to take this anymore. So, as much as social media is like that, there is still a way for people to talk out, and it is getting momentum.
I think it's very important that we speak out and that we call people out for what they do, because the longer we ignore it, the more it's going to happen. And that's why it's very important that at this time, I think the revolution is coming, and it's important that we're changing things where we see it. And I believe that the youth is so important in this change, because if not us, then who? If we want to see the change for our children and our grandchildren and the society we're growing up in and we're going to be living in for a very long time.
Yeah.
So I think that's why a lot of us are coming out today, just to get our voices heard and to show that we're serious and that we should be taken seriously, because this affects us as much as it affects anyone else.
Yeah, and it certainly does. I mean, I know that a lot of the youth of today look to their parents and their grandparents and think, you know, I want a better life, and I don't want to keep quiet, and I need to own my space. The famous line from our former Miss South Africa, own your space, take that space up in this world. And I feel that that's what the youth of today are doing. They're saying that enough is enough. You're going to be owning your own space as well when you physically go down to, if I'm not mistaken, Grayston Drive in Sandton. Talk to us about what's going on, because obviously with COVID-19 it's a bit difficult for everybody to get down there, but it'll be a conversation online and an actual protest. So talk to us about this.
Yes, so we have an Instagram page called The Youth's Truth, and then we have a hashtag called SA Youth for BLM, sorry. So we're going to be, whoever can't make it today, we want them to continue the conversation online and get it trending so that we bring it into and we make it noticeable. So if you can't make it today, then go ahead, and we appreciate any help we can get. So what we're doing is at 12:30 on Grayston Drive, we're going to meet outside the McDonald's, and whoever can come will come. Please come, actually. We're going to take registration, and we have a system, so we've got like marshals helping us so that everyone is going to be at least 1 meter apart. So we're going to basically like make a line like on Grayston Drive with everyone spaced out. So we're not going to be marching, we're going to be standing there in protest. We're still going to be chanting, just to ensure the COVID-19 regulations are followed.
So I want to talk a little bit about this, the Youth's Truth. What led to the formation of this particular group, and what is it really all about? Who are the members? What are the kind of things that you're speaking to there?
So I wasn't actually a part of the formation of the Youth's Truth. So what happened is my friend Malaika and my friend Taslim started to create where they thought that they could highlight people's stories and youth's points of view, and especially in the South African context of what they feel is going on, so that they give them a voice. So they contacted me asking me if I wanted to write something for the page, because they've known that I've been involved in activism for a really long time. So they asked me, why don't we have a march? So I brought in the idea of actually having a physical march to bring in more attention. And yeah, so then the three of us started planning. We started planning this about a week ago.
Wow.
About a week ago.
Okay, so
Yeah.
this is the planning of a week. So hopefully it's going to make that impact that you're hoping it will, because you know, as we keep saying, this is something that seems to be crippling societies globally. You know, to actually see the youth coming out and people coming out of all ages and colours and you name it, they are there. They are kneeling in streets. They are standing there, whether they be peaceful protests or not peaceful protests. They're wanting their views to be heard. So if you had to sit down, I mean, let's give you the voice of let's give you the ear of the president. If you had to sit down with him and tell him one thing that the youth would like to see change, what would that be?
Sorry, I can't hear you, please.
If you had to...
What would I...
Yeah, what would you tell the president? If you had to ask him for one thing for the youth of South Africa, what would that be?
I would ask him to acknowledge that it's not over and that there's still racism, and that even though apartheid ended in 1994, we're still feeling the effects today, and that we should acknowledge it. And the only way to change what's happening is if we acknowledge it and call people out, and not think that it's an issue that is over, because it's not over, it's very much alive. And yeah, so just if paying more attention to what people have to say. I feel like that's important. I think the youth in particular, because we face it on a more subtle level in schools and stuff, and that's where it's being engraved into our brains, right? If people are being racist to us, we think that we're inferior. So I think acknowledging it in the system and listening to us and letting us have a voice and not taking us more seriously when we say that we know what we're talking about and that this is our experience. Does that make sense?
It makes all the sense in the world. You look after yourself. And one more time, just your meeting at Greyston, right by the McDonald's at 12:30, is that correct?
Yes, 12:30.
At 12:30, and you're asking whoever can to come down and support you. Good luck. Good luck for a week in planning. I think you've done a good job so far. The Youth's Truth, Shreya Semnarayan is talking to us here about a protest that they'll be having on Greyston Drive in Sandton from around about 12:30 today, all against systematic racism. If you'd like to visit their Instagram page, it's @The Youth's Truth.